Welcome everybody today. This is another in our series of Ben webinars. What we offer to our portfolio companies and the community are some educational opportunities regarding entrepreneurship and building your business. So today, Mia Hanson of PI Midlantic will be leading the discussion on not just predictive index, but how to use that instrument in real time in an actionable way. I think going back in my history, I know that I don't know if any of you have taken things like the Myers-Briggs Index going back, and I think it was almost obligatory sometime in your career you've taken it. But I think personally, I found that kind of wanting, right? I mean, at the end of the session with Myers-Briggs, I mean, it sort of ended the day saying, hey, I'm an INTJ and you're a JERK. And then all of a sudden, you just leave it at that. And there's really no follow-up. And I think what we hope to show today, and Mia will guide us through this, is how the predictive index can be really actionable for organizations, not just personally, but among teams and building culture and recruiting. So the analytics that are available, I think, are going to be really powerful. And I think if you can come away with that, I think you'll find this tool something that you'll fall back to in your work life and your professional life going forward. Before turning over to Mia, I will say that we're lucky today. Not only is she's hosting the event, but I think she's a birthday girl. So Mia, happy 32nd. The best present you can give to Mia is your undivided attention. So with that, again, offline, you can, as you're listening, you can do the index. But Mia, you can take the screen if I'm correct, and you can
Alrighty.
Guide us through it.
All right. How is everybody this morning? Everybody's good? Yes, it is my birthday. So you have to be very, very kind to me today, just so you know. No, I'm teasing, but welcome. I hope everybody's doing well this Tuesday morning. And thank you, Mark, for the introduction. I am one of Ben's value added, if you will, to their portfolio companies that they have. I know that we've opened this up to the greater Ben sphere. So welcome to you folks that are not one of the portfolio companies. And this is going to apply to you as well. So the thing I want you to think about before we get going is I want everybody to think about that movie Moneyball. Does everybody remember that? I mean, if you're a Brad Pitt fan, or if you're a baseball fan, or even just a sports in general fan, you probably saw the movie. It's about the Oakland A's, their general manager, Billy Beane, and he was the very first to really revolutionize sports in general by using analytics and statistics to make very important decisions on recruiting and other decisions within putting the team together. He totally changed it, even against everything. There were so many naysayers that thought he was crazy doing this. But rather than making all of his decisions very subjectively with his leadership team, he decided to bring in analytics, strict analytics on how each player, what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were, their RBIs. And so by doing that, by incorporating analytics into building his team, he won for the first time in like over 100 years in baseball, 20 consecutive games. And that was against teams that were much more better funded than his. So I want you to think about this movie going forward and how analytics is something that really companies in general, not just teams, but companies in general should start to consider when you're putting together your teams. So here's our agenda for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about your business strategy, and I want all of you to be thinking about this as we go forward. And then how that compares with your people strategy. And then we're going to go over, everybody on the call, I believe, has taken the PI pattern or has done the PI assessment. If you have not, I know that Nicole put it into the chat. Please click on that link, because I'm going to go through a little bit of information of how we glean that data. And by having yours in front of you, you can better understand where all that is coming from. We're going to touch upon talent optimization, which is what's behind all of this as far as aligning your business strategy and your people strategy. And then we're going to revisit key initiatives in your strategy and how they relate to your people within your company. Does that sound good to everyone? Am I missing anything? Okay, good. So let's get going. So what I want you to do right now, all of you, is take 1 minute. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time because we've only got an hour and we have to be mindful of it. But I want you to consider, what is our most important goal for the next year or even next 2 years? What is that most important goal? And then I want you to start thinking in your head, what are some of the strategies to get to that? Okay. And what are my business results going to look like? So take 1 minute. And I want you to write that down. I want you to truly just write down, what is my biggest goal for the next year to year and a half to 2 years? And what do those results look like? If you'll take less than a minute now to do that. And I want you to remember, these are some of the key business, the strongest points for a strong business strategy. It needs to be deliberate, simple, actionable, agreed upon, and communicated. Okay. So I'm going to move ahead. Hopefully you've all gotten something written down. So what is talent optimization? So now you've just now written down your business goal, and you're going to put a strategy behind that goal. Let's say the strategy or the goal is, we're going to introduce a new product within the next 6 months. We want that to be big. What is the strategy to get there? Okay, so I want you to think about that. So what you're looking for is, at the end of that period, you're going to have the results that you're looking for. And that should be pretty smooth. But what happens when it's not? Why sometimes do our business strategies not lead to the business results that we're looking for? And I want you to think about what's in the middle here. In the middle is your people. That is what makes the business strategy turn into those business results. So what talent optimization is pretty much aligning your business strategy with your people strategy. So you've got the right seats on the bus, the right people in the right seats on the bus to get you to those business results. So talent optimization is several things in one. Number one, it's design. It's being very deliberate on how you put together a team, or how you put together, and I know that we've got a lot of very high level people on this call, your leadership team, how you put that leadership team together to come up and be able to accomplish this business strategy. So we are very deliberate. We use data analytics to make sure that we've got the right team set up for that. After that becomes hire. As you're bringing in new people, what do you want these folks to look like from a behavioral and a cognitive standpoint? You really need to have these things mapped out to your business strategy. After that, after you've hired all these fantastic people and you're really happy with them, how do you continue to inspire them through the course of their career with your company? So how do we engage these folks if we're going to have the most efficiency and effectiveness out of them? It's critical. And then we're constantly diagnosing that. We're always looking at that so that we're making changes. We might be bringing new people in. We might be bringing someone else into a specific team for a specific strategy. Every company has different strategies at different points in their periods, but also within that company, not just the leadership and strategy of the whole company, but some of the project teams underneath, they've got a different strategy. So each one of these teams could have a completely different design aspect, hire aspect, inspire and diagnose. So keep that in mind as we go forward. You wrote down a goal for the next year to 2 years, and I want you to think about the kind of people that you have on your team to accomplish that goal. So let's start from the very basic. Know thyself. Socrates said this. It's incredibly important. Why is it important? According to the AMA, they did a survey of 75 members of Stanford Graduate School of Business. And what do you think that they rated was the most important competency for any leader? That competency is self-awareness. It's critical. If you're not aware of yourself as a leader and what your strengths and gaps are, you can't find the people to build up your strengths and then fill in the gaps of what's needed. Let's take it another step. Harvard Business Review, they did a 5-year research and they found that, of leaders, of people within different companies, 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but really 15% are. And so self-awareness is critical. How do we become more self-aware? Now I want you to take a look at your PIs that you all have. And again, if you haven't taken it, I'd really encourage you to take it, because this next hour is going to be a lot more meaningful to you if you've taken the PI and you have something to look at about you as I go through and describe some of this. So you've got 3 graphs there, right? You've got the self concept, and the synthesis. These are very different. The self is basically who you are, what makes you tick. Sometime in our maybe late 20s or so, this becomes pretty solidified. We become who we are. We don't change a whole lot over the course of our lifetimes. Now, that said, this B could go a little bit to the right or the left. The A could shift back and forth. For all of these 4 factors to flip sides over the median, very rare, but that's very different from your self-concept. That's the second graph. Your self-concept is how you feel you need to adapt to your current environment. And a lot of things change that. That is your role that you're playing right now. It could be the people that you work with. It could even be affected by if you had an argument with a spouse or even a colleague that morning. So while self doesn't change really over the course of our lifetimes, self-concept is always changing. It's always changing because as humans, we adapt. We know we have to. It's what makes us human. But how much are we adapting? Are we stretching ourselves so much that at the end of the day, we're exhausted or even bored? It could go either way. So what happens is if you've got somebody on a team or an employee where their self is very different from their self-concept, and this M factor is falling substantially, you could have somebody that is stretching so much that it's uncomfortable for them. So that means you need to have a phone call, or not a phone call, but you need to have a conversation with that person about, tell me what's happening in your life, in your work. Is there something we can do to help you to not feel like you're adapting so much? The final one is the synthesis. And that's basically just the average of the self and the self-concept. And what we say is that's how people perceive you to be. So it makes sense if you think about it. If this is who you are, the self, and the self-concept is how you feel you need to adapt in your current role, most likely somewhere in the middle of there is how people actually perceive you. So that are the 3 patterns that you're looking at: the self, the self-concept, and the synthesis, okay? Now, here's how we read a pattern. Right here is the median. And this is your standard statistical bell curve, if you will, where if you go between -1 sigma low and +1 sigma high, about 67% of all the people that do this assessment or survey in a year will fall within that. And we do about 4 million of these a year. So we can make some pretty good generalizations about people just in general. So if you have one of your factors, A, B, C, D, that's within 1 sigma low and 1 sigma high, you know that that's felt by about 67% of the population that have ever done this. Now, as it goes farther out, Imagine this, fewer people have it to that extent. So if you're right here between -1 and -2, or +1 and +2, only about 17% of all the people that have ever taken this survey will fall within that. And then even farther than that, only less than 2% have it if you're even farther than that, from up to 3 sigma out. So I want you to consider that, because the farther something out is on your PI, the more strongly it's felt, okay? And also another thing I want to mention is when we look at the A, B, C, D, we're not only just looking as where is the A, where is the B, but where are they in relation to each other? So that's called factor combinations. If this person right here has a very high B, extraversion, and a very low C, patience, that tells me that they're going to be very, very quick to connect. They are driven to meet lots of people, talk to people that they're not familiar with. That drives them. They appreciate that and they enjoy it. It doesn't exhaust them to do that. They like it. So I want you to keep that in mind. So now let's talk about those 4 factors. What are the A, B, C, D? How's everybody doing? Let me take a little quick breather here. Is everybody okay? Yes? Okay. I know I put on the end of this that questions and answers at the end, but you know what? This is not a large group. So if you have a question and you're afraid you're going to forget the question, please just pop in, let Kate or Nicole know, or just speak. And I'm happy to address that question right away. So your A is your dominance. Does everybody see their dominance, their A on their factor? And now we're really going to talk about the self pattern. Remember that top pattern? I want you to think about dominance when you look at your A. If somebody has an A that's high to the right, they're a very dominant person. If somebody has one to the lower, under the midpoint, they're more collaborative and team-oriented in the way that they do just about everything. And we'll get into that in a moment. B is your extraversion. It's your need for social acceptance and approval. And, somebody with high B wants to be liked. C is patience. And that is not just patience with time, but also patience to me is stability. Somebody who likes routine, who's very deliberate in the way that they do things. That would be a high C. Somebody with a low C would really appreciate multitasking. They get bored doing the same thing day in and day out for hours at a time. And D is formality. And that is a person's need for details, structure, that type of thing. That they want that information. They like to put policy in place and they like to follow policy. So these are your A, B, C, D. So let me talk a little bit more deeply about what dominance is. Somebody to the right, again, they have high A or high dominance. They like to put their name on things. They like to be the one that said, I did this, I did this with my group, versus somebody with a low dominance. They're going to have a group too, but it's going to be my team, my people. It's going to be very collaborative and very much team oriented, versus somebody that just is assertive and independent, likes competition, that type of thing. Somebody with a lower A likes competition, but they prefer it in a team oriented setting. So if you imagine that somebody who has high dominance, their needs are very different from somebody with low dominance, and their behaviors are going to be different. Somebody with high dominance is going to be very determined. And if it gets super, super high, they're forceful even. And then it changes the other way too. Somebody with lower dominance is going to be supportive, again, very collaborative in the way that they get things done, in the way they communicate, in the way that they delegate, in the way that they lead. If your highest factor is A, and I haven't looked at anybody's PIs, so I don't know, but if your highest factor is an A, this is what motivates you. You like competition. You like to set yourself goals, and you feel you're happy with taking on responsibility for those goals. Extraversion is B, just a little bit more detail about that. When I think of extroversion, I don't think of how you are with people that you know, like your family or your friends, or even colleagues that you've known for a long time. To me, extroversion is more about the people you don't know. We all have that friend or colleague that goes into either a cocktail party or a networking event. And they work the room, right? They know everybody in the room. They're patting people on the back, shaking everybody's hands. They might, by the time that networking event is done, they might have spoken to 20 people or 30 people in the room. And they seem to know everyone and they get energy from that. Somebody with low extroversion, it doesn't mean that they won't do it. It doesn't mean that they won't go to the cocktail party or go to the networking event. But rather than having maybe 15, 20 conversations, they're going to have maybe 5, 6 conversations, and they'll be a lot more in depth. So I hope that everybody understands the differences in extroversion. Somebody to the low side is more introspective. And as a matter of fact, most artists, even musicians, are low extroversion. It just makes them more introspective, if you will. So imagine again, those two people they've got different needs. Somebody with high extroversion, they want public accolades. They want to talk to everyone. They want opportunities to talk things out when they have to make a decision. Somebody with low extroversion is going to be very different from that. They're going to be the one that says, you know what, give me a couple of days to think about it and I'll get back to you. So you've got to understand the differences in people on your team. And then they're also going to see different behaviors from extroversion where that is. And then if B is your highest motivation, this is what motivates you. People, it's all about people. You want to have validation on anything that you come forward with. I have high B. I want to be liked. It's as simple as that. And so that drives me, that people like me. So then let's talk about C. I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock, if you will. So C is patience, as I mentioned. And again, I don't think of it so much as time only, but also pace. Somebody with very high patience likes to do things one at a time. They prefer to be very deliberate in the way they go about things. And somebody with high patience doesn't mind sitting at their desk doing things day in and day out, like spreadsheets and any kind of reports and that type. They'll go over them and over them. They like to take that time to do it right. Somebody with low patience, if you set them at a table all day or at their desk all day, just doing the same reports day in and day out, it would drive them batty. They would hate it. I mean, imagine if you're somebody with low patience doing that. If you're low patient, you need multitasking. You need a variety in what you do every day. It would drive you crazy to just sit in the same place and do the same thing day in and day out. So again, the needs and the behaviors are going to change depending on where you are on this spectrum. If you're very comfortable with the familiar, or you're more comfortable with pressure and change. So I want you to think about this. There's a story within PI, Bellagio Hotels. I'm hoping everybody knows who they are. So they are in Las Vegas, and they are a long PI client, and they did all of their blackjack dealers, if you will. They had PIs for them. And for the longest time, they were hiring low extroversion. But what they found was too many people were leaving the tables. It's important once somebody is sitting at that table that they stay. And so they started looking at, let's add a little bit more extroversion to when we hire a blackjack dealer. And so they found that people were staying longer at the blackjack tables, but also they were hiring for high patience and high formality. If you imagine, they wanted their dealers very patient with the people, with the clients. And they wanted obviously high formality because they wanted them to follow the rules, if you will. So what happened was they changed something in their card dealing, like overnight. They made a different rule to all of their blackjack dealers. So you've now hired these people to have high patience, meaning they need time, they need deliberateness, they need a routine. And you're springing a major change on them the night before. They ended up losing a lot of their blackjack dealers because the blackjack dealers saw it as, you have no idea the complication of what I do, and you don't respect me. And so if you don't know this about your people and you spring something on somebody who has high patience, you're going to frustrate the heck out of them. And so you got to know that to understand how to manage your people, work with members. If your highest motivation is patience, this is what drives you. Group intimacy, familiarity. Okay, you can't make a change overnight on somebody with high C. Final one is formality. And again, the needs and the behaviors change depending on where you are with formality. Somebody with high formality, they love structure. They love framework. They love putting policy and structure in place, and they love to follow structure and routine in place. They're the ones that say the rules are there to be followed, versus somebody with low formality is like, oh, you know what? A rule's, it's not really a rule, it's a suggestion. And so there's a big difference. So somebody with high formality, if you ask them for directions to a place you've never been, they're going to know the names of the streets. They're going to know approximately what the mileage is. They're going to give you very detailed directions on how to get somewhere. Somebody with low formality would probably say something like, yeah, you go up, I don't know, it's maybe a mile or two. There's a church on the left. That church, turn right there. That's the kind of thing you're going to see with formality. So you need to keep these in mind too, okay? If your highest factor is formality, your motivation is you become very good at best practices. You become the expertise of something because you're driven to truly learn it. You prefer structure in your day-to-day. You like a routine, if you will. And so there's differences there. Now, just to drive home, one of the things that PI says is all profiles are beautiful. And we do believe that. We really do. And so just to drive that home, I kind of want to give you several past leaders and what their strongest factor was, okay? General Patton, he ran World War II. I cannot imagine us being successful in World War II with somebody without a high A, very authoritative, very dominant in their style. That was his strength. Martin Luther King, he had high extraversion. I mean, think about this. If you think, I have a dream, he led through people. He was good at inspiring people and bringing them together. That was his strength. Third one is a little bit surprising, Steve Jobs. But if you think about when Steve Jobs was around and Apple, he never released a software, he never released a product until it was perfect. And it could take months after it was supposed to be released. It didn't matter. If it wasn't right, he didn't release it. And so he was very patient in that. That was his strength. And it's one of the things that was the strength of Apple. Now I can't say the same thing. I use a Mac, and since then, they're always releasing things that are glitchy, and you got to wait the time for them to figure it out. So I want you to remember that. Final is Alan Mulally, formality. He was all about structures. Alan would sit he was CEO of Boeing and CEO of Ford Motor Company. He would sit in front with a dashboard every morning, and he wanted to know all the details about all the different divisions of Ford Motor Company. And it was that formality, that need for that kept him from being one of the few companies, or the only company, that didn't take the government bailout in the 80s. Sorry, no, it wasn't the 80s, 1998. So let's go back to talent optimization. And first thing is hire, I want to talk about, okay? How analytics should become part of your everyday hiring. We go back to this Moneyball. He was all about the statistics of each player to help predict what their performance was going to be. And so this is important. Why? If you've been hiring, or if you've had to let someone go, or you've lost an employee because they were bored or frustrated, it's expensive to replace them. Very expensive. And I would say that this is the low side of that. So we've got to get these hirings. We got to get them correctly. And here is how analytics can help you. We do a job targeting. So you have a benchmark. Let's say you've got, and Johnson is going to speak to this in just a few moments. He's going to actually show you how Ben used this aspect of Predictive Index, of the tool of analytics, to hire their new COO. And so you put together a benchmark of what the role needs. And then you can even compare role models. Who do we have? Let's say you're hiring for software. But this is a customer-facing software engineer. And so you need to know what are the needs of that role, and then how do we hire within that? So Epan, you go ahead and take it from here. I'll stop sharing.
All righty.
Johnson.
No problem. So I'll make sure I share my screen first. Are you able to see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We doing okay so far? So I want to kind of, talk to you a little bit about, how we internally at Ben use the Predictive Index platform. So since I've been at Ben, I've been using this for almost about 2.5 to 3 years now. And I am responsible for HR and our internal operations at Ben. So before we kind of talk about, how does Ben use all this, I'm going to step back a little bit. So Mia shared all these details about the profile. But let's take a step back and see, before we get to that point where you talk about your people strategy and talent optimization, how can we use this tool to make good hiring decisions, that we're hiring the people that we want to in our organization? So there's this great piece in this Predictive Index tool, and Mia was talking about the talent optimization model. The specific model in there, the building block in there is, there's a section called hire. So I just have my mouse on top, you can see that. So part of the hiring process, you have a lot of tools in that you can use. But the very first thing that we start off with is to create a new job. So if I was to click that, it'll take me to a profile where it'll allow me to put all the details of the position's requirement. For example, I just created one for a general counsel, chief operating officer. We just wrapped up the search, and actually I will not talk in detail about the profile assessment itself because that person is sitting in this room. We will skip that part of it. We'll focus more on the job descriptions and how we got to where we wanted to see what the assessment and profile will look like. So I'm going to click on that. So the first thing we did is, as part of the job description, we see like there is so many questions that the Predictive Index asks you. And then once it asks you those questions, it gives you this profile. For example, this is my target. You see these 4 blocks in here. This is my target of what we think would be a good fit of the chief operating officer candidate when we get that. How did we get to this point? So in this job report, so you will actually see my entire job description that's in there for the chief operating officer. So there's information from here that was taken. And then once the information was taken and it was analyzed, it gave me 3 profiles. It said the profile of the candidate could be a pursuer, a captain, or a controller, okay? So that could be your end outcome of what you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be right there, but this is kind of giving you guidance as to what you want to think of. So for me, from a HR perspective, what this helps me do is it gives me a lot of tools that helps me get prepared. So when I am interviewing for this position, I have some details in here in terms of what to look for when I'm having conversations with candidates. Am I hearing the right things about what they understand the position and what Ben needs? Are there similarities that'll help me understand, make the right decision in terms of this person is going to be the right fit? So this is a great tool for that. It gives you a lot of guidelines in terms of, what are some behaviors to look for, what will they be hearing, what will they need? And then it gives you a nice little summary of what that person would profile would be. Job characteristics. The best part about this is it gives me the four the alphabets that you showed earlier, the A, B, C. It gives the factors. It gives me right there and that. But it also gives me, if I want to do a cognitive target, if we were hiring for somebody that's very analytical position, I go through the process of having them do the cognitive piece as well. So that's kind of helpful to do that. Let me just go back. So this piece is the most important piece for me when I'm doing the assessment. It tells me, what the profiles would be like. And then what the good thing about this is once we have the profile set up, so when I get to the finalist part of who the candidates are, I send them a link to take the assessment, and then I get the score. And the good thing about getting the score is that I can then go and see the score that the candidate has got. How does it align in terms of team dynamics with the supervisor that this person will be reporting to? Or if there's a larger team, how will this person get along with the other team members? So it gives me a whole set of assessment that's not only going to help me make a good hiring decision, but once I bring them on board, what tools do I need to get them prepared to be able to do the job that they need to do? How do I and then further from there, what I do is I use that in terms of my leadership development. What are some areas that we need to fill the gaps in? What are some coaching that needs to be done? So this piece of the predictive index part, once I develop the job target, then it kind of helps me develop, leadership coaching. I do one-on-ones with my staff, kind of help them there. We sit with the managers and talk about, what are some gaps that needs to be filled and so on. So my big emphasis is before I even get to the point of where we need to do the assessments, once they come on board, is I start all the way when a job description is written. So that helps me really well to kind of understand where I need to move forward. For example, I created another one also for a business, for a manager of business development. And if I was to see like right here, it gives me like a summary of what are the three targets that I'm looking for. For example, the manager of business development, absolutely. I need somebody who's a strategist. Somebody who's a venture, be able to go out and talk to people, come up with strategies, make sure that they're giving them the right information so that their portfolios will be successful. I need somebody who's an analyzer also. So this is what I look for. This is really helpful for me when I kind of make my hiring decisions. So what I also do is like kind of keep track of it on a regular basis. How is this person doing? It helps me to create some benchmarks. And then ultimately my goal from all this is to create a leadership model that'll help them grow in the organization that kind of meets my talent strategy. Does that help?
Great. It does. I couldn't have said it better, Johnson. That was fantastic. I appreciate that. So yes, as Johnson mentioned, he puts together these benchmarks of what they're looking for, the perfect candidate for the role. And then as candidates come through, they are given the assessment, and you guys have now all taken it. Hopefully it's 2 questions. It takes about 5 minutes. So it's a simple, very positive experience for the candidate and for the employee. The information we can glean from that is amazing. So there are, as Johnson mentioned, there are interview guides so that as the candidates coming in, you can pass the interview guide to the hiring manager and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Here are maybe some gaps, and the interview questions change based on that. So thank you, Johnson. That is exactly how we would use it from a hiring standpoint. So let's go to the next little thing, which is inspire, right? Now that you've got these great people that are working for you, how do you inspire them to be the best that they can be, to be the most efficient and effective? And I want you to think about that, the degrees of separation, if you will, when it comes to this. If studies have been done on this, that if you are right with somebody, work with somebody even that is a happy person, your chances of being happy as well increase by 15%. That's huge if you think about it. And then if you're not even with that person day in and day out, but you're maybe a degree separated from them, it's still you're 10% more likely to be happy, but it goes the other way. Unhappy people. So if you hire somebody incorrectly, or you don't inspire them the way that they need to be inspired. It's the other way around. You're increasing your unhappiness substantially, but not just yours, but the people around that person as well. So it's kind of, when you think about it, I like to compare it with the zombie apocalypse. You've got one zombie in your company. What happens is it kind of infects the rest of your organization. So you've got to be really careful that as you're bringing in people, you're engaging them and you're making them happy and you're managing them the way that they want to be managed. So this is important to think about managers, all your managers that work for you, as well as yourselves, that just okay managers or just, not so good managers will play checkers. Every piece is the same, right? In checkers, it moves the same. It can, you can win, but those pieces are the same no matter where you are across the board and whatever piece it is. That's not the same with chess. Chess, every piece is just different. It has different strengths and different weaknesses. And you've got to understand how each player plays in order to win. So, that golden rule of treat others as you want to be treated in management, that can be the kiss of death. You cannot manage people effectively the way you want to be managed. You have to learn what drives them and manage them. A good manager would do this, manage them the way that they need to be managed if you want them to be most effective. And if you want them to keep them happy. So different things that Johnson was mentioning, these relationships, you can do relationship guides between the manager and the employees. Each manager should get an employee needs guide for every one of their direct reports. This is what Joe Smith needs in order to be happy and effective. So then the final one is design that I want to talk about today. We talked about putting teams together. Design really comes about when it comes to not just the team of your whole organization, but a team within the organization. And just to show you a little bit of this, I want to talk about one of the companies that I worked with, one of Ben's portfolio companies. I'm not going to say who they are, and I've changed all the names. But it's one of the things that I want you to think about when you think about, remember I asked you to write down your strategy or your goal for the next year. I want you to think about that goal when I go into this next piece, okay? Because every team is committed to a common purpose, but that purpose might be different. It could have depending on what the team is needing to do. At purpose, that strategy changes. So this was a mid-sized technology company, portfolio company for Ben. And they asked me to come in because what was happening was, if you can imagine, these guys were brilliant. And they had this amazing technology, but they were having a hard time getting to the next step. How do we get over the hump as far as commercializing this? We now just need to start putting these things into place. We need to start putting procedure into place, policy into place. They were hiring people constantly. And what was happening was they couldn't quite get there. So you had all these great entrepreneurial thinking people who came up with this technology, but how do we now monetize it? How do we commercialize it? And so we went through this, and this is part of the software as well. What is the strategy that you're looking for the next 2 years? And they based it on 2 years, and it was build the product and commercialize it. So we've got this great thing, but for some reason, we can't get over the hump. And so the software takes you through that, and they were able to figure out what it is that they need from a strategy standpoint. Then what happens is, as you go through the software, you're picking particular phrases that have to do with your strategy. So if you remember when you took the PI survey yourself, you were choosing words to describe yourself. Instead, with the particular design piece, you're choosing phrases that have to do with completing a strategy or getting to the goal. And these were the things that they chose. They chose, they go through this whole thing. And as a team, all 8 of them in the room decided on these. This is what's critical for us to get commercialization and to release the new product. So what I want you to look at is this. See this? These 3 bars here? They realized that the predominant thing that they needed as a team to get to that next step had most to do with process and precision more than anything else. Yeah, it needed a little results and discipline, a little innovation and agility, and a little teamwork. But boy, that's big. So then what happens as team, we put all the team members on, so they were looking for a stabilizing strategy, if you will. So that's what the software says, you're looking for a stabilizing strategy, and it all has to do with process and precision. Now let's take all the team leaders, okay, the leadership team that was in the room, and let's take a look at, well, where do they lie within this? So as I mentioned, I changed the names to protect the innocent. I love music, so I picked, musicians, but the initials are the right ones. And so then let's lie then. What is the most glaring thing to you? I mean, if you think about it, there's a huge disconnect here. And truly, when the CEO first saw this, the first word, holy cow, this has been our problem the whole time. This is what we need from the team in order to get to that next step. And here's all of us. And so there was a real eye-opening experience for them, because they realized no one on the team is driven to this. We all get bored with process and precision. We're all about new things and innovation and all of that. We get bored with this and nobody wants to do it. So then it's like, okay, here are the different strategies. You can either, if you're in this quadrant or this quadrant, it might be easier for you to stretch to do these pieces. And if you're on the opposite of that, you do need to step back and let somebody else take control of it. So other than that, they also, what they wanted to do was, well, let's look at the next tier of the company. Let's go. So there was the 8 of the leaders in the room, the COO, the CFO, the CEO, all those folks. And then they said, okay, let's look at Tara Reid. I can't think of a name. Let's see if she comes up in here. So they would start to go through the next level of the company, of the organization, and see who is it that we can bring on the team, not necessarily for a leadership role, but we can bring them on the team when it comes to our project of commercializing. And so by doing that, they were able to find that the 2 more people on the next level that they were going to start using to help with this process and precision. Okay, so that's kind of where that goes from that case study. And then they did an analytics. They wanted to understand how the team worked, their strengths. And so the software does this for a team standpoint. And then the final piece of talent optimization is diagnose. Remember, I mentioned there was design, which is what we just talked about, hiring, which is what Johnson spoke about, and inspiring, how to engage those people. We should always be diagnosing that. And one of the ways to diagnose that is an employee experience survey. Because employee engagement is that important. If your employees are engaged, you're twice as likely to be successful than any organization your employees are not. Twice as likely. That's pretty big. And so this employee experience survey. And that's it. I'm at the end. Oh, I got 8 minutes. I'm so excited. What this is meant to do is for you to realize that you shouldn't just accommodate the differences within your organization. You should respect and love those and understand the strengths and weaknesses of everyone. We all have them. Understand it so you can best lead and best manage and best build your teams. And that's it. And there's my information. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I know that, like I said, there are some portfolio companies on this call, but a lot that are also not on portfolio companies. So please reach out to me, feel free to. And if for some reason, weeks down the road, all of a sudden you've got a question, reach out to Mark or to Johnson, and I'm happy to help you. Also, if you have more questions about your particular report, please reach out to me. I'm happy to do a read back for you and go into a lot more depth on what makes you tick.
So Mia, just, I did one as we were talking. How do you get the report delivered? And if they did it real time today, how is it delivered to them?
If they should have received it right back. So I made that link that I gave to you guys, where the minute you hit submit, you get your report back. Did anybody do it and not get their report back?
I tried it. I did not get it back, but I just tried it just to see how it worked.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I saw that it's not on kiosk mode is the only thing I can think of. Did anybody else have that problem?
Yeah,
Anybody?
we had an issue. Jared here, he didn't receive his either.
Oh my gosh, I apologize. They're most likely in the system. I will make sure that gets to Garrett. I apologize. I did set up the link that the report should have gone right back to you. Did anybody get their report back?
Yeah, I got mine back.
Okay, all right. I apologize, Garrett. I'm sure it's somewhere in the system, and I will make sure that it gets back to you.
So just to finish, so yeah, and that's great, just to make sure we don't drop the ball on that. If there are any questions, we have a couple minutes, but what I would say is, if you are a portfolio company out there, the work that Mia has done is that in part she showed you today, that type of analysis is available to our portfolio companies at no cost to them because we have engaged PI Midlantic. So in other words,
right. So those team analytics that Mark is talking about, yes, that is available to the portfolio companies.
Correct. So in other words, I think a lot of people will say, well, what's my individual PI? But the real power of the tool is being able to use it at that sort of team level, strategy level, hiring level. And so for our portfolio companies, if you're not taking advantage of it, you're leaving a great service, basically, on the table, which I think is a sin. So to finish up today, thank you very much for everybody who listened in. We will send out a survey asking for feedback. I think, Nicole, one of the questions we did last time is, Mia, if you're interested in, possibly hosting, let's say an office hour. So maybe sometime in the future, if you wanted to host an office hour and anybody who listened today could come in, listen in, ask questions. If any of the folks would love that, that was one of the feedback items we had from another webinar. So Mia, if you're interested, and maybe as a follow-up, hosting an office hour for people that want to get engaged a little deeper, glad to do that.
Absolutely. Yes, so absolutely.
As a follow-up. I keep thinking about, as Ben Franklin and being an investor in early stage companies and talking to a lot of other venture people, you always go back to this question of, is good wine the results of the grapes, or is good wine the results of the winemakers? And a lot of investors have sort of answered that question by saying, no, it's team, team, team. And most VCs say it's the winemaker, not the grapes, because there's always challenges, there's always pivots, there's always things that are unanticipated. And so if venture people say it's the winemakers that are more important than the grapes, it underscores the fact that, the people dynamics are what really can make or break, opportunities. So using these kind of analytical tools and providing that insight just seems like it should be the ordinary course of business. And I hope today Mia convinced you of that. So thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Do this again. Mia, we'll do this again in a year on your next 32nd birthday. So we'll do it for a year from now. So everybody, thank you very much. If you have questions, please reach out to Mia directly. Her contact information is on this slide. So I'm going to close this up in about a minute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, assuming you got the contact information. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We're right on our end point. So thank you. Have a great day and stay warm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.